Hello everyone, it's Rory Man, and welcome back to another season of The Pawn. Season 3 to be exact. And this season, attribute decks got butchered. So, I probably need to explain two things. One, I didn't build this deck. Two, I'm an idiot for net decking. Three, shout out to Sara Saria for actually building this deck for me, which, to be honest, after testing, chances are they would have been able to use this deck far better than I would have in these 5 duels that I actually had to go through. Also, I was also an idiot for not putting in a side deck, and because of that, I was kind of locked in with no side deck. But I might as well explain it. I do have the Seiyaru as the giant beat stick, Jin and Neo, and a bunch of Amazonas cards, basically being an Amazonas beatdown deck. But I will say, one of the best cards in this deck is Melffy Rabi, and some of my duels here will explain why. So, basically in a good tradition, let's get to the duels. So, our first duel is with... I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, our first duel is with Red, who is using an Earth Attribute Warrior deck. We start off with Jin going after the Giant Rat. And then they take out our Shard of Greed, which they also take out our Jin. And they attack us for a lot of damage as well. On my next turn, I decided to go for a Spy Summon and go for Swordswoman, because Swordswoman has a neat effect where if any damage that she would have taken would go to my opponent instead. So I do have a good defense with that. Unfortunately, 200 life points is not enough to scare off my opponent. I do have Poison of the Old Man, but this first duel is where I just started regaining life points so I can still live. Because unfortunately, my deck wasn't really being cooperative, and I wasn't able to just draw monsters with here. So I've been just trying to regain life points as fast as I can, hoping that I would live. I don't believe I actually lived this one, so yeah. Our second duel kind of sang the same song as well. I started off with Unexpected Die, gave myself a Jin, and set in a Melffy Rabi. Unfortunately, they tribute my Melffy Rabi, and I have to deal with a Beat Stick now. Unfortunately, I have nothing that can really go over said Beat Stick, and that becomes one of my main downfalls, is that this Beat Stick can actually change my monster's attack position. So, I have no good way of getting past it. I even question why I even brought Melffy Rabi, especially when that dragon can bring Melffy Rabi to attack mode. Because Melffy Rabi only has 0 attack points. And at this point, I think Red actually takes this game, because unless I draw something very significant, all I did was use a Melffy Rabi and just attacked into the Warrior Digrapper. Our second duel is against the host himself. Yes, Season 3, Chew the Whoop. And of course, I start off with just Neo the Magic Swordsman, and Chew here is playing a Machina beatdown deck. I do put a little more pressure on Chew, but unfortunately, I used Noble Man Crossout to get rid of the Machina Peacekeeper. Of course, he uses a Genki Break to get rid of my monster and goes for the Rock Spirit. I take 1700. And I do have Jin that can actually go over it, but I also wanted to just go over the... Yeah, Rock Spirit's effect actually gave it more attack, so I just wanted to get rid of that. Of course, there's also Crazy Beast, which Crazy Beast's unique effect is not letting monsters go to the grave, which to some monsters, that's actually very important, especially for my baby tiger that's in my hand, which I will show off on a combos later on. I do use Poison of the Old Man to delay my defeat, but unfortunately, just like my duel with Red, I couldn't draw out many of my main monsters. There's the Machina Gear Frame, which allows to search for a Union monster. And at this point, I think I actually lost at this point. I think I lived by at least a thread. No, that's game 1 for Chu. Our second duel actually seemed a little more different. Chu was actually having difficulty getting monsters because the first monster that he says is Peacekeeper, and I decided Nobleman cross out it and Grant out of play. I do try to go for a second monster. Trap Hole stops it, but I decided to go for free 1800 points damage. Now at this point, I kind of actually have the advantage at this point because I can deal a lot of damage. So I summon out another monster just to go for more damage. Of course, I was being a little more overconfident because on my next turn, I decided to do this. I decided to put Melffy Rabbit just to taunt him. Yeah, this is what I get for taunting because I could have won if I didn't taunted. Otherwise, I do recover 2 of my normal monsters from the grave, and now there's a defense position monster. I do have the Spy, so I did decide to special summon Spy and go for Swordswind and attack it to the defense position monster. Unfortunately, it's a bunch of giant rats, so Chu's just living by a thread. One poison of the old man could have easily defeated him, but unfortunately, there's some things that I can't get over. If anything, Chu pulled a Yugi here and was actually able to get what he needed. And at this point, I was just trying to go for game here with Swordswind, but unfortunately, the Head Rush spell card is still popular in this format. I basically just try to stall it out and try to either wait for a Poison of the Old Man or even Seiyaru, just because I needed something. And unfortunately, I did try to bait him into a card, but unfortunately that didn't work as well. And I just started losing all my defense. I did have the Melffy Rabbit, but just for extra defense, I did get another Melffy Rabbit from my deck. Unfortunately, that was not enough defense. There was the Man-Eater bug, and I believe that is where he actually has game on me for game number 2. I believe so, yeah. So for game number 3, we go against the Infernal Ape God himself, Trey. And we start out with a bunch of spell cards in our hand. Yeah, we are still having unfortunate luck with having no monsters in our hand. I do start off with a powerful attack, but unfortunately defense draw is a thing. Now, to my knowledge, Trey was also running an Earth Attribute deck, which had an Ancient Crimson Ape in his hand. He will be using that later. Unfortunately, he starts basically milling out his deck for some odd reason. I didn't know why. At some point, I decided to just go with it, which unfortunately with what I have in my hand here, I couldn't really do much. I did get the Baby Tiger into my hand and started doing more damage. I was hoping that I could at least get enough damage to do just so I could get through, but unfortunately he gets the Shard of Greed and summons out an Earth Attribute buffer. And at this point, I needed to summon out something that would help. I did have the Baby Tiger. I did bring out La Jin, but the Baby Tiger and Amazon the Spellcasters actually did switch Baby Tiger's attack. So what I was trying to go for here was an all-out attack and destroy all his monsters. Unfortunately, that didn't work because he had a spell card ready. There's Ancient Crimson Ape, took out my Genie, and I still take more damage. At this point, I just drew it to Seiyaru. I did go for more Genies out of my graveyard and just used them to defend because I didn't really have Melffy Rabbit. But Trey did take out my defense, and at that point, I lost game number 1. Game number 2, on the other hand, is more or less the same story of I did not have enough monsters. I did summon out Neo at the first turn, but he also summoned out a monster in attack mode. I figured, you know what, I might as well go and attack into it. I fell for the Bat Trap card, which I cannot pronounce. So he starts basically using his spell cards to get rid of my spell cards, but unfortunately they were Poison of the Old Man. My one goal with the Poison of the Old Man was to use them for bluffs. Unfortunately, those bluffs did not work that well. So, basically, I summoned out more monsters. I decided to go for more damage by taking out the Earth Attribute Buffer and Swordswoman taking out another monster. Unfortunately, Trey's deck does have a good deck thinning strategy to here. So, me destroying a lot of his monsters that could search out did not help me in the slightest. And, of course, just summon out more weaker monsters. I decided to switch out Baby Tiger's attack again and decided to try to go for an all-out attack, which still doesn't work. And at that point, I believe Trey won game number 2 because of that. He does summon out the Shard of Greed, does try to take out my monster, which at the end of this duel, I think, yeah, I did try to recover more life points, but unfortunately it was, oh wait, I still had one more turn. Which I did have Swordswoman, which brought up Baby Tiger. I think it was after this, yeah, it was after this that, yeah, basically, I drew into Ciaru, and that's where I knew I lost the game. Basically, all he did was draw a card, got more of his cards out of the deck, and attacked me for a Deep Diver. So in our next duel, we go against Shadow Gallade and his Spirit deck, and we try to start off with Summon out Lajin and attacking into his defense monster. So with 2 Lajins, I decided to attack with 1. He uses the effect to bounce one of my Lajins back to my hand, and on his turn, he summons out that same Spirit monster and brings Lajin back to my hand, and he gets off some free damage. Because of that free damage, I can also go and summon out a monster and go for a free damage as well. So I summoned out both Spy and Lajin because I want 2 monsters on the field, so even so he summons out another monster, he can't go for more free damage than I can. Of course, Shadow realizes this and has the Mare of Yada in his hand, so he equips that to his monster to keep it onto the field, so I can't go for more free damage myself. So, in order to do this, I didn't want to go for it to destroy it, but unfortunately that spell card destroys my genie instead. He summons out another Spirit monster, goes for more free damage, and with that he has a decent defense, so I decided to build up a defense myself as well, which unfortunately he falls for my defense monster's defense. At this point I realized something. I can easily attack into his monster and go for some pretty good chip damage as well. And with that chip damage, I could probably get more into it in this duel. Unfortunately, he tries to crash into my monster, which I say no. He summons out, sets another monster, but unfortunately, I didn't want to attack into another 1900 point attack defense point monster, so I decided to go for more chip damage with my Swordswoman. And at this point, I also realized there's the Asura Priest, which I wasn't really too worried about because Melfi Rabi was there, but I didn't expect him to have Melfi Rabi's defense. And then he also sets up a defense with that. I do go try to get Baby Tiger into my hand to set up a combo, and I do summon Lajin to get rid of Mare of Yada. Now the unique thing about spirits is they only go back to the hand if they were normal or special summon that turn. If they weren't normal or special summon that turn, they don't go back to the hand. So Shadow has a decent 1700 attack point monster. And at this point, I was low on life points and needed to recover. So I do summon out Lajin, take care of the Asura Priest, and at this point, Shadow was trying to do something that didn't really work out too well because he wasn't reading his cards correctly. So he decided to keep normal summoning out monsters. I did have the Veil, which did save me from losing this game. But at the same point, I decided to go for more damage and basically wait out his next monster, which he summons out that thing, which he crushes one of the monsters. I decided to use the spell card to get rid of the wrong monster, and Shadow surrenders that duel. And because of that, we move to Dueling Book, and we start our second game. Unfortunately, I was only able to get Shadow's perspective, so I have to now look upside down and basically explain what I was doing this one. Unfortunately, I didn't really care for winning this duel. I decided to meme here. I decided to go for Sayaru and finally attack into decent monsters. Unfortunately, having Sayaru against this deck was not the best thing to have. Because of that, I did a misplay here because I tried to go for 2 baby tigers. I should have only had 1 baby tiger. And of course, Melfirabi's defense means nothing to Shadow. But unfortunately, I decided to get my Melfirabi back and summon La Jin just to go for another attack. But unfortunately, that does not work for me. And La Jin goes back to my hand. He gets some free damage on myself. I summon out Veil to recover life points. And I just summon out a bunch of monsters, go for Sayaru, and go for more damage here. Unfortunately, this strategy does not help me at all because that monster constantly throws Sayaru back into my hand. And unfortunately, I can only go for that plan at least 3 times with Spy. And unfortunately, another thing that I have to do is also go over monsters that have higher attack. And because of that, this is where it got really difficult just to survive. And at this point, he summons out a bunch of monsters, takes out my Melfirabi, and takes out the rest of my life points. At duel number 2, well, duel number 3, basically, I summon out a set of monsters, go for an unexpected die. He summons out a bunch of monsters. My Melfirabi is still there. I go for Baby Tiger. And at this point, I know for a fact I was just memeing. I can't really do much with the replay here because I know it lags a little bit. He decides to thin out his deck a little bit. Gets that giant spirit monster out. Attacks into my Melfirabi and destroys my Baby Tiger. And at this point, I just had to keep up a good defense because no matter what I did, he was able to break through it. There goes Neo, and I decided to use Poison of the Old Man to just poison him a little bit more. I do bring Swordswoman back to my hand. I do summon Melfirabi, and I also quickly summon out Spy. And at this point, I should have attacked the defense monster instead of going for Shadow's attack monster, just so I could actually have gone for more chip damage. I do actually get a little over... I actually do get a little overboard with just Melfirabi here, and just summon Melfirabi continuously just because it was just memeing here. I decided to just go with a lot of Melfirabis, and Swordswoman was just going for more chip damage. And at that point, Shadow was just destroying rabbits one by one, and I was going for Swordswoman again, going for chip damage, and he summons out a bunch of monsters, and at that point, he goes for more damage on me. I got 2 Sayarus in my hand. I can't really do much with them. So at that point, he attacks for game. I poisoned him one more time before this duel ended, and our next duel is against Incog. He's also running a Machina deck. Actually, no, not a Machina deck, a Amazonas deck. There's just Machina cards in it. I do have my Melfirabi, and I also go for the Blowpiper and go for Amazonas spellcasters. And basically, I take out both his gear frames, but he summons out another Gear Frame out. I do have Swordswoman here, so I did try to summon out a bunch of them. And unfortunately, I started getting Incog started getting the upper hand by having Blowback Dragon. Now, the thing that Incog tried to do here is use Blowback Dragon's effect to get rid of my Melffy Rabby, which he failed constantly to do. So, unfortunately, he had to manually attack into Melffy Rabby and just take the damage there. Of course, he tries again with the Coin Toss with the Blowback Dragon, and again proceeds to fail with destroying. Well, actually, he was destroying my face down. I decided to go for memes again and go get my Melffy Rabby from the graveyard, because unfortunately, I knew I wasn't going to go get into playoffs at this point, so I decided to have some fun and just go for Melffy Rabby. He has 2 Blowback Dragons, which means he has 2 chances to go to kill Melffy Rabby with his effect. So unfortunately, he fails the first one, and on the second one, he fails. Yeah, so he had to manually destroy both my Melffy Rabbies because he missed them. I then summon La Jin, and I make the joke here saying that the only way that his effect was going to work was basically on the card that is representing Incog. So he gets that effect off, and I think he actually got game here. Yeah. Now, on to game number 2. I started off with getting Neo the Magic Swordsman out in the field, and basically attacked the Giant Rat, who also summons out a Spellcaster. I had to be careful with that Spellcaster, because if that Spellcaster actually attacks and lives, I would have to deal with the consequences. So I thought the Swordsman was just going to attack into me, and I just take the life point damage. But unfortunately, that was incorrect. And he has a bunch of monsters on his side of the field. Now, one of the major mistakes I did in this duel was actually not that. I decided to recover life points. I decided to go for Searu and attack into the baby tiger. Unfortunately, that's actually what's going to be my downfall, because Incog started using Swordswoman and reducing my life points by 1,000 each time. I got rid of some more of Incog's monsters, but unfortunately, Incog started to bring out the third Swordswoman and get to another 1,000 point of damage. At this point, I also summon out more Swordswomen as well as myself, and I try to go for a heavy amount of damage because I thought there was no way for him to get another Swordswoman. He does get one more Swordswoman, but he needed another one to defeat me. But basically, from what he did, he summoned out a Swordswoman and another Swordswoman and went for game. So, yeah, 5 losses in a row. We didn't get one win against Shadow, but it wasn't a match win. But the important lesson here is this. It is good to take advice from friends who will be able to give you building decks, but at the end of the day, I really should have built my own deck instead of just net decking off of this person. So, Saria, thank you for building this deck. You could have probably done this deck a lot more justice than I could. But unfortunately, I won't be using this deck again anytime soon. But I will be trying to go for Season 4 when it happens. So, next time, Season 4.